She sipped the fragrant brew and slowly found the equilibrium that was usually such a natural part of her. Before 6 weeks ago, she'd felt settled and satisfied, her life on track, everything falling into place. Her optometry practice, a year old now, was thriving. She had a full patient load and she loved it, especially working with the kids. Her mom was thrilled that she was out of college and back in town, and she was engaged to marry Rick, her longtime boyfriend and best friend. Everything had changed in a single day. The day 2 of her friends from high school suggested a day trip to Harper's Ferry. Rick had made plans to help his dad, and since one of her friends had invited her own younger brother and his girlfriend Christy, Natalie had brought Xavier. Her stomach clenched with the grinding, constant yearning to go back in time and change that decision. If only she hadn't invited him. If only they'd chosen the outlet mall in Leesburg instead. The morning had been pleasant as they'd traipsed about the quaint, historic town, and then her memories just blanked out. A week later, she and Christy awakened in a field nearby with no memory of the time between. The bodies of 3 of their companions had been recovered that first afternoon. Only Xavier remained missing, and her life had careened off the rails. Taking a small sip of the hot brew, breathing in the hazelnut and warm coffee scents, she tipped her head back and watched the pink clouds amble slowly across the dawn sky. Somewhere, somehow, Xavier still lived. She was sure of it. She'd awakened in that field to find a quarter-sized circle on her palm, drawn in pen, a circle with a small curve in the middle, a smiley face without the eyes, one of her blind brother's favorites. She felt certain Xavier had put it there, a message that he was okay. But where was he? Where had she been? And why hadn't he come home too? As the weeks passed, her fear grew that she might never see him again. She had no choice but to carry on. But that missing week haunted her. Grief at the losses she'd suffered had settled like a fist beneath her breastbone, an ache that throbbed constantly, refusing to abate. Natalie took another sip of coffee, envying the clouds that floated free of the cares of the world. A low sound caught her ear and she straightened. A movement in the trees caught her eye, and her heart lifted on a thrill of pleasure as the huge wolf who'd visited her a few weeks ago bounded into view. He was a magnificent animal, easily the size of a bear, with a thick coat, variegated black and gray on his back and head, sable on his legs and belly. He wasn't really a wolf, of course, though he might have some wolf blood. He was too friendly. At least he had been the last time. She watched him carefully, her more primitive instincts urging her to retreat to the house, just to play it safe. But as he crossed her yard, as she peered into that beautiful, intelligent face, she once again felt no fear. Exhilaration, yes, and awe, but not fear. Not when those golden eyes of his radiated a warm, joyous welcome. She smiled, his arrival lifting her heart and easing the burden from her shoulders, holding it aloft for a few precious moments. Setting her mug on the table beside her, she turned to him as he leaped up the few steps to the deck with a grace that belied his size. At the top of the deck stairs, he stopped, gazing at her like a human might, rather than rushing forward like a dog. Still, unbridled pleasure filled his eyes, a pleasure that burst in her chest with utter delight. Grinning, Natalie held out her hand. "I'm so glad to see you," she said quietly, not wanting to wake Rick or the neighbors. The dog's hesitation lasted all of 2 seconds more before he strode forward, sliding his massive head between her waiting hands. How was it possible she'd missed him so profoundly when she'd only met him once before? Yet that's exactly how she felt, stroking the thick, soft fur on the sides of